Welcome to the mid-season premiere of the 5-5 Sports Podcast. I'm Aviva Mirsky, here with Evan Rutenberg and Matthew Toyd. We are back after spending the last few months on our Spirit Live radio show. But we are back and here to continue with the NFL season as we break down Week 15. Let's start all the way back with Thursday night. The Chargers pulled off an overtime victory against the Raiders. Did this end any hope for the Raiders season?
Yes, it did. You can't lose to the Chargers if you want to be a serious team. The Chargers have been a mess all year. Anthony Lynn is, unless something dramatic happens or unless the Chargers decide to really mess up their future, he'll be gone next year. But the Chargers have they have a promising future with Justin Herbert. They have a good offense. Their defense is a bit injured this year. They lost one of the premier safeties, Derwin James, early on or before the season even started. So they've had injuries. They've struggled, but their season's really come down to kind of late game disasters, not getting it done, not even within the fourth quarter, within the final 2 minutes of games. That's where they've really won and lost games. So the record's a bit unfair to them, but Anthony Lynn deserves a lot of credit for where they are in the standings. But if you look at the Raiders, they've played well this year, most notably against the Chiefs twice. They took the Chiefs' own loss came against the Raiders in week 1. So I don't know if that's a one-off. Who knows? They still played them well later on in the year. But the Raiders have their issues. They're not a great defensive team. And on offense, it's very 50-50. And the big question now is between Derek Carr and Marcus Mariota, and more specifically, the future of Derek Carr and how big is his future with John Gruden and the Vegas Raiders.
Yeah, it's kind of clear that, Derek Carr isn't that, bona fide, future quarterback that people once thought he would be for the Raiders. And especially with that injury and then Mariota taking over, we don't know how long Carr will be injured for. But even that side, I just don't think that the Raiders could catch up to make the playoffs because the teams that they need to catch up to are the Ravens and Dolphins, and they're both just better teams than the Raiders. The Raiders haven't played well this season. I give them credit for some of the games that they pulled off to win, especially like you said against the Chiefs. But I think they've run their course for a season. I don't think they can really go any further. And going for Chargers, I think you're spot on. They have a bright future. Justin Herbert's the featured star quarterback in the league. And they had a lot of injuries this year. They lost their running back, Austin Eckler. And every game he did play, he was a huge contributor to their offense. He's not only, effective on the ground game, but he's also a pretty frequent target for Herbert as well. So with him back and healthy next season, it will definitely help the offense a lot. But I think that being said, it was still a team that Raiders should beat, and unfortunately for them, they did not.
It's almost typical Raiders, they always, or over the last 5-6 years with Derek Carr, they've always been a fringe playoff team, or they've always been right on the edge of the playoffs. Whether it's a 5-6 seed, always going. If they do make it, they go in the first round. But they're a team with a lot of good pieces on offense. I think Josh Jacobs is a terrific running back. We've seen over the last 2 years that he will be a future star until his decline starts, but that's years and years away. Darren Waller has proven himself as a tight end. I think the problem is almost like Baltimore. They don't have great wide receivers. We haven't seen much from Henry Ruggs. We know about his speed. We've seen moments. We've seen against the Jets the last second touchdown for him. We've seen him get away from a few guys, but it's not consistent enough. He's not receiver that's going to get the ball 10, 12 times a game. So he was the one taken before CeeDee Lamb, and he was taken before Jerry Jeudy from the Broncos. So the Raiders, they have the right pieces, but they're not the complete team. And I think they've played pretty well on defense for the most part this year. But they always have that game late in the season where they should win. They need to win to get in the playoffs, and that's the game they always lose. It's a typical Raiders season. Nothing really surprised you. It's really the Raiders season has just been a repeat of the last few years.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing about them. They are stuck being mediocre. And then you talk about the lack of receivers they have, and you think back, they thought they're getting their number one receiver in Tony Brown. And obviously, that didn't work out. They had Amari Cooper, who had good rookie season with them, had a bit of a slump, and then they traded him off to Dallas, who eventually fits way better with Dallas system. Yeah. And now they are kind of stuck with that territory where they have a good running back, they have a great tight end in Darren Waller, but Who would you say number one receiver is? Will it be like Aguilar?
The problem is Aguilar is not a very good receiver.
Yeah.
What he's known for is not catching the ball. It's for drops. And, if you're open enough, you'll have a few catches. But we've seen time and time again, you can't rely on Nelson Aguilar.
Yeah.
He's definitely not a number one guy. We know this. This isn't rocket science. This isn't breaking news.
He's a good depth receiver to have, but like he can't be your number one target.
But just on Darren Carr, he's had an up and down career. I think overall he's been fairly consistent. I think he may get a little more hate than he deserves, but I think overall he's played well, and I definitely think he's elevated teams. But when it matters the most, and when you get into crunch time, Derek Carr isn't a top 5 QB, and that's really how QBs are judged on. You need to be an elite QB because it's the most important position in football. We keep saying this week in, week out. And sometimes you have to judge, QBs at this point in their career. Derek Carr has been in the league now for a while now. I don't know exactly how many years, but yeah, it's kind of, he's in his prime of his career. If, this was his time to show what he can do, but at this point in his career, you have to kind of look at Derek Carr and say, he's not going to lead you to a Super Bowl. And that's kind of where we are in Derek Carr. We've probably known this for a few years, but we've kind of confirmed it at this point.
Look, he's a good quarterback, but he's done as much as he could for the Raiders. Like, I'm not sure how much. I don't see any change coming to the way he plays anytime soon.
Yeah, and it's not to put blame on Derek Carr.
Yeah, exactly.
It's an honest analysis of what he is.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're just not the best at what you do. There's a lot of great QBs in this league, and Derek Carr just isn't that. He hasn't hit that top tier of QBs and where you need to be if you want to be in a position to win.
Completely agree with that.
Yeah, okay. So let's move on to the Dolphins versus the Patriots. The Patriots are out of the playoffs for the first time since 2008. What are your thoughts on this and on the game overall?
I'm just gonna, it's a day of celebration today. Patriots not being like it's been a while. Looking back, you almost have to respect what they've done over the last 2 decades. It's really incredible. Like the playoffs are not easy to make in football. It is the hardest sport to make the playoffs out of the top 5 leagues. We know this or them in baseball because of the limited amount of teams that do make the playoffs. So it almost makes you reflect on the Patriots. We know what happened. They had guys opt out. Defensively, they didn't look great all year, and Cam Newton clearly isn't a number 1 QB anymore. They tried it. They kind of got away with it for a few weeks early on in the season. Then teams adjusted, and we saw, kind of a true reflection of what the Patriots really look like. They overachieved because of Bill Belichick. They got a few more wins because of him, but they were never going to make the playoffs. The Bills are kind of finally taking the next step into leading that division. We're waiting for, one of those 3 teams in the AFC East to kind of take over the Patriots. We're wondering when it happened or when was it going to happen. And it feels like we finally have it in 2020, and the Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins look like the future of the AFC East. And we have to wait on the Patriots to see kind of when they could bring themselves back.
Yeah, it really feels like an end of an era because after
it felt like the end of the era once Tom Brady left, because we knew we knew the era was Brady and Belichick. That was what it was. But now not making the playoffs, it kind of it comes full circle.
After 2 decades of seeing the Patriots dominate the AFC, we now finally see them they're not even in the playoffs. That only happened 2 other times this entire century so far. And I mean, you said it all. I think there's a lot of respect that we need to have for the Patriots, kind of looking back on that team and looking at the legacy that Belichick and Brady created together. And especially seeing how Belichick was able to kind of carry this team to at least being in the playoff running for most of the season, until this past week. Cam Newton, I've said this before, Cam Newton isn't the same Cam Newton that people think about when they say that name. He just isn't.
Yeah, and I think people have accepted that. I think when he signed the 1-year deal, they said, there's hope there. It was a good deal because, they had nothing to lose, the Patriots.
They didn't lose.
I don't know who their back. It was Jared Stidham, right? The backup, and we know Cam Newton is a better QB than Jared Stidham.
Yeah.
So it was, they took a chance on Cam Newton. I wouldn't say it failed completely because he didn't look horrible, the whole season. There were moments where you kind of with Cam Newton and said, is it possible? But at the end of the day, there's too much talent in the rest of the AFC. There's too much talent in the rest of the league, and the Patriots just didn't have enough this year. It's clear. It's obvious. They always gave 100%. There's no doubting the Patriots' effort all year. That's just the Patriots' culture. That's their identity, and that's what Bill Belichick demands out of everyone. But they fell short this year, and there's no blame to put on anyone. It's just the reality of that.
Yeah, and Patriots, they had the time, and for them the time has just come to an end. And now younger teams like Dolphins and Bills, they're just like they're fighting to take that place now, and that's what happened this year.
Yeah.
Okay, so next we have the Cardinals versus the Eagles. What were your takeaways from this game?
And I wish we could, bring back clips that we said last week and just, prove when we're right and wrong. I said distinctly a few weeks ago that Arizona, whatever the spread was against Arizona, Philadelphia, bet the Arizona spread, because Arizona every day practices against a QB like Jalen Hurts and Kyler Murray. They were going to win that game no matter what, simply because Arizona knew what to expect. They were the better team. The Eagles aren't good. Jalen Hurts is kind of having that renaissance thing where, he's a new thing in town. Carson Wentz is just so bad, so he's come in. He's done a good job, but we still have to look at the Eagles as they're not a very good team. Their roster, I don't see it in their roster. There's a reason they're 4-9. And we'll talk about Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts a little bit later, but they've definitely been, energized and rejuvenated from Jalen Hurts coming in, which I'm surprised because I really didn't think Carson Wentz would hit the lows that he hit this year. It was pretty remarkable to kind of look at his career trajectory and see how far he's fallen. But, the Eagles are competitive again. Doug Peterson's kind of getting a lifeline in his coaching hopes with the Eagles beyond this year. Are they a playoff team? I think the three teams ahead of them in the NFC East are all just slightly better and slightly better well coached. But Jalen Hurts has definitely been a breath of fresh air for that team.
In terms of the Eagles, yeah, I don't think they have any hope. I mean, they still mathematically they're not eliminated yet because just for the fact that the NFC East hasn't been very good for most of the year. But I mean, they're facing Washington in the last game. Washington currently has a place, and I would take Washington over Philly any day at the moment, because they have that good defense and a defense that would be able to stop Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts, I think he has proven himself to be able to play these games. I'll give him credit for how he's been playing. Do I think he's the future for the Eagles? No, because I just don't think we've seen enough of him, and I don't think from what we've seen it has been enough to really say that he's a bona fide future superstar in the league. How I usually like to have faith in younger QBs who are just starting, and I had that kind of feeling for Lamar Jackson, for Kyler Murray, but I don't say I have that for Jalen Hurts yet, at least, because I feel like there still needs to be more that we need to see from him.
You know what? Yeah, sorry, you can finish your thought.
And just because at the Eagles, at a franchise, they're at the moment, they're so they're not a well-managed team right now. They are kind of a mess. They need to really regroup and rethink about how they plan out the future of the franchise, because they thought that they'd be riding on Wentz for many more years. They thought Wentz was the future of the team. Now they suddenly switch with Jalen Hurts this season. And like I said, Wentz has reached a new low in his career, and I don't think he's going to really be able to come back from this, to be honest, because it's such a huge drop off from what people expected from him.
Yeah, just on Jalen Hurts quickly, it's a very similar theme, just over the history of sports. Is you can't be good for 2 games and then kind of expect to be good and have a guy expect to be good the rest of his career. You have to be the consistency is really all that matters in sports. But we can't write off Jalen Hurts simply because of how well he's playing, kind of what he's been able to do with the Eagles.
So I'm not writing him off.
It's nice, it's important to get a good start as a young player to get that confidence. So now he has to kick on. Now we really have to see what he's made of. They have 2 games left against 2 division teams, one being the Cowboys, and I'm pretty sure they play the Redskins. I think the Eagles play the Redskins and the Cowboys in their final 2 weeks, if you could fact check that. So it's a big test for Jalen Hurts. He can really do something that at the beginning of the season we didn't think the Eagles really had a possibility of. So it's nice to see Jalen Hurts kind of bring fresh life to the Eagles. Now his career can kind of kick on. We can judge him over the next few years. But it's good that kind of he's had that good start, because without that good start, he would have been written off completely already. And
I'm definitely
exactly,
not writing him off.
I'm just saying at quarterback, you just need a good start, and now he can kick on. So he's done the right things early on. So far, he really hasn't put a step wrong. So credit to him. Now let's see where he can run with it. What can he do now?
My biggest concern of him, though, is the fact that he is playing for the Eagles. That's my biggest concern. I think he has the potential to be, in a proper system, he has the potential to be a great quarterback. And he has proven himself so far. But I just think he needs the right franchise, and I just don't see the Eagles being that franchise.
He has strengths. He has weakness. I think one big weakness is his control of the ball. He has to be better in that area, because you can't be turning the ball over, especially at QB. But look, it's been a good start. We'll keep judging him. I don't think we can say too much about him, because 2 weeks isn't a lot to kind of get a grip on a guy. But we know what he was about in college and Ohio State. So we'll kind of see how the next 2 weeks play out, because they are not eliminated from the playoffs. The Eagles do have a lot to play for. We have to remember that. It is not over for this team. He has a big 2 weeks ahead of him.
Yeah, but against two other teams that also have a lot to play for.
Okay, on that note, following this, we have the Jets' shocking win against the Rams. What were your reactions to this game?
It's a horrible result for both teams. If you're looking at the fan base, if you're looking at both fan bases, they're probably both devastated. The Rams I don't know how the Rams lost. The Rams have looked good all year. They've beaten a lot of good teams. I don't know what happened. I only started tuning in for the last 5 minutes just because I didn't think it was possible. And then when I realized it was, and I said, hold on, this, may be something to keep my eye on. And the Jets, I don't know if they blew their chance at Trevor Lawrence. They better hope the Jaguars kind of sneak a win. But that game has huge implications for both teams. It really does. And it's a result could have never seen coming.
Man, it's funny. The Jets are so pathetic that they can't even tank properly. Like, they're on their way to getting Trevor Lawrence, and then they win against a team like the Rams to somehow just ruin that. And
I don't think the joke of tanking the players on the field have too much pride. No player wants to go 0-16. It's just embarrassing. You've seen the talk in the locker room throughout the season, or you've seen quotes from the Jets players, especially like Frank Carr saying, I will not finish 0-16. I can't retire like this. I'd have to come back for another year, which is what he said. Players don't want to be 0-16. They work too hard. They give too much. There's too many sacrifices away from family. The travel. You never want to go 0. Oh, they did, but it was one win, and the Jaguars also have one win. Yeah. You don't want to go 0-16. It's a good one for the Jets players, but the only people that would be happy within that organization are the players. The executives are probably pissed to no end because they just lost, the chance at getting their knight in shining armor in Trevor Lawrence. The comparisons are to like Andrew Luck, Joe Montana, so the comparisons are pretty high for Trevor Lawrence. So losing out on a guy like that, it's just the implications are huge. Despite the fact that they have one win, they would not have the number 1 overall pick because the Jaguars also are a 1-win team. And based on the schedule toughness, the Jaguars, as of now, have that number 1 pick.
Look, Sean McVay said he'll sick to his stomach after the game, and honestly, he should feel like that because you can't be a playoff team like the Rams and then lose a game like this to the Jets. You're still fighting in the playoffs. You don't think it's secure yet, but you've proven to be a good team. You've proven to have one of the best defenses in the league and some of the best defensive pieces in the league. And to lose like this to the Jets it's a huge embarrassment. Yeah,
I just don't know how it happened from the Rams' point of view. Just sloppy play. It's a lack of focus because any other day they don't let that happen. So just very surprising from the Rams. They had 4 quarters to do something and they just looked flat throughout the entire game.
But just kind of stir the Rams as well when we think about they.
Yeah, but it's not an excuse. It can't. It just you can't lose to the Jets.
But it's also can't. In a way they often beat tougher opponents and lose to weaker ones, and unfortunately they lost to the weakest opponent they had this season.
Maybe they should just play playoff teams for 16 games. Maybe they win the Super Bowl.
On that note, next we have the Chiefs versus the Saints. Yet another close game where the Chiefs edged out. What were your thoughts on this victory?
We learned what both teams are made of. We know what the Chiefs are. Nothing surprising there. Chiefs don't look like they're out of second gear yet. I think they're still saving themselves from the playoffs, and knowing that they are safe, they will have the bye. I don't blame the Chiefs for not going, 100% right now, because they don't have to. It's not like they're fighting for a playoff spot like, the aforementioned Rams. The Saints, so they had a chance to prove something, and the Chiefs were not they weren't out of second gear that entire game. The Saints are playing to prove themselves, having Drew Brees back, and they were just sloppy plays. There were mistakes throughout the game from the Saints, where if you make the right plays at the right time, you don't lose that game. The play I'm specifically thinking about is the end of the half where Alex Anzalone on that punt return had the ball sitting in the end zone, and he botched it, went out of the end zone for a safety rather than a touchdown. It's just plays like that. It really symbolizes the Saints. It seems like they do that consistently. They make the wrong plays at the wrong time, and I don't see the firepower this year. I don't see I don't see the X factor on the Saints. I think we know what they're about. Coaches will have a game plan for them. I don't take the Saints very seriously. I don't think they'll get a win in the playoffs. I think there's just too much talent throughout the rest of the league. I don't think they match up very well against some of the big boys.
Yeah, I don't have that much faith in the Saints. We know that Drew Brees is one of the greatest quarterbacks to play game, but he's not the same. Like he looks aged. That's the symbol of that. Michael Thomas has been MIA for most of the season and is MIA once again because of his injuries. Kamara, good running back, but he has fallen off when after Brees' injury a bit. He hasn't been as highly productive as he was earlier in the season. And something I noticed while watching the game was it just looked easy for the Chiefs offense.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a perfect way to describe it.
It looked like Mahomes looked like it was just coming. It was second nature to him to just beat the Chiefs, to beat the Saints. It didn't seem like he was even trying his hardest. I mean, I'm sure he was. I'm sure he was trying. I'm sure every game the quarterback comes and they try their best, but it didn't seem like he was ever expecting to lose this game, even when the game was close. It seemed like he always had the confidence that, okay, yeah, I just have to kind of just do my minimal effort, and then we could win this game.
I think the point you're trying to make is the Chiefs, if they are or when they are challenged by one of I think either by the Bills or the Titans, I think those are the two teams that will play them the most competitive come playoff time if they end up playing each other. The Chiefs have another gear to go into to beat those teams. They have another level that they haven't reached over the last few weeks, just because they haven't had to. We've seen, against Miami, there were a few moments where Mahomes or he made a few mistakes. We talked about 3 picks last week. So there have been moments where we haven't seen Patrick Mahomes at his best, but the standard is so high for him that we're expecting his best every week, and that's just not going to happen. He doesn't have to bring his best right now. We have to judge him on the playoffs. If you want to judge him against a game against the Saints when they're 11-1 and basically have the number 1 spot locked up, then go right ahead. I'm not judging him off that game. He didn't, it was easy for him. Good for the Chiefs. They're a special team, and what matters is what they do over the next few weeks in the playoffs. Screw the regular season. It's done for them. It's a joke.
And let's be honest, even Mahomes, let's say you got 50% of Mahomes. That's still better than half the quarterbacks in the league right now.
Exactly.
Moving away from the NFL, now get into some basketball and the start of the NBA season. You already made your predictions for this upcoming season, so instead I will ask, which team are you most excited to see?
You know what? I have to go with Miami. I'm just excited to see what they're made of this year. I really am looking forward to the 3 rookies and, Adebayo, Hero, and Robinson. They both all 3 of them brought so much last year, and they contributed a lot to the playoff run. So, people always talk about the sophomore slump. I'm curious to see how it's going to affect them this year. Will they actually, face that? I think Eric Spoelstra has put them in the right, areas to succeed. The game plan he has is terrific, and they're a very modern NBA team in the way they play, the way they shoot, the way they play hard on defense. I'm excited to see what they're made of this year, and I think the team I'm gonna go with in the West. I'm gonna pick two teams that had the best playoff series last year. I'm gonna go with Denver and Utah. I think those are two teams that can maybe break through in the West this year. I think they definitely have the talent. They have the young point guards and Donovan Mitchell and Jamal Murray now entering kind of the prime of their careers. Kind of the expectations are higher than ever for those two. So I'm really excited to see those two teams in the West, and I'm going to keep a special eye out for Miami this year to see how they can replicate their success from last year, because the pieces are there for a very good team.
I'll pick a team in the East and West as well. In the West, I think for me it's the Phoenix Suns. I think we saw how well they started to do at the end of the last season, like during the bubble, and we saw Devin Booker really breaking out. Like he was already kind of pre-established, but like we saw him going further. We already know that DeAndre Ayton's going to probably take a step forward this year as well. But now that they have Chris Paul, I'm really excited to see how far they go, because I was being a fan of Chris Paul ever since back in his New Orleans days. He's just such a talented point guard. He's clearly one of the best point guards we've seen in the last 2 decades.
Yeah, first round Hall of Fame. No doubts. But he doesn't have a ring yet. He does not have a ring, Chris Paul. That's going to be the big thing.
Exactly.
Can he win in Phoenix? I don't know.
And we saw how much he elevated OKC last season. And we saw how players are able to break out because of his playmaking ability. And he has a better situation now than he did in Phoenix.
I'd say mainly Shea is the one that broke out. And they kind of had a backcourt duo, Chris Paul and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander there. Which is the reason they overachieved and finished 7th, where no one thought they were even going to be close to the playoffs. So congrats to Chris Paul.
Yeah, people thought Chris Paul was just a bad contract, and he proved everyone wrong. He proved that he's still, even in his age, he still has a lot left to offer to his teammates. And now that he has Devin Booker, a lot of young talent around him to kind of spread the ball around to. He could really take the Suns as far as season. I'm not saying that they're favorites to win it all, but I do think they have a lot of hope this season. In the East, I know you're going to disagree with this, but I'm excited to see how the 76ers do. Because
that's fair, because they're a team that can it's a team with a lot of unknowns. So I'd say they are a team to watch, because we really don't know how they're going to perform throughout the year. Big question marks on them. Especially
since I think the biggest problem with them was the coaching. I think Brett Brown is a coach that should have been fired long ago.
Yep.
And we know what Doc Rivers can do. He is an experienced head coach. He took the Celtics to the to the NBA Finals twice, and then won one of them against the Lakers. I'm excited to see what he can do with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, because the biggest issue is they seem to not be the right players to actually play together, because the way they both just sit in the paint, and the way they kind of they have no perimeter threat. But now that they have perimeter threats with Dane Green, I think they made fewer acquisitions of names I can't just remember right now. And if Doc Rivers could plan a system that allows both Embiid and Simmons to thrive, I'm actually excited to see how well they do. I'm not sure I necessarily want them to see them do well, because I would rather have the Raptors go farther than them. But the talent is definitely there. The talent's been there for a while, and I just think that they've underachieved because of poor coaching and a lack of a effective system for their star players.
You said I may disagree. I completely disagree. I completely agree with your pick of Philadelphia. I almost forgot that they got Doc Rivers. It's kind of gone under the radar, because we've been talking over the last few days of, is James Harden going to go in a trade? Would Ben Simmons be traded away? But they have got a lot of additions to their team. They got Danny Green. They got guys like Seth Curry, who's going to improve their shooting. Guys like Shake Milton and Matthias Thybulle have a lot of expectations off the bench. We've seen kind of moments from them. I think Philadelphia is a team that should overachieve. I think they should be better, especially now that they got rid of Brett Brown, who was definitely holding them back. I think if they're healthy, they could easily be a top 2 team in the East. They could be. Should be competing with Milwaukee and Boston, and they should. When you look at on paper, they should be ahead of teams like the Raptors and arguably the Heat. They got Dwight Howard, they still have Tobias Harris, and we know about Embiid and Simmons. The pieces are there for Philadelphia. Are they the best shooting team, which is kind of the trend of the NBA? No, but they're a team that they have great defensive players. They have a good kind of core around their two superstars. So the question is, can they change the kind of identity, and can they change almost the way we view the 76ers as a team? Because we've kind of viewed them as soft and, undisciplined over the last few years. They have to change their identity if they want to win a championship, because kind of the culture that we've seen around the Philadelphia 76ers hasn't been a team that will contend for championships. So that's a big question mark on Philadelphia. So I completely agree with them being your team to watch, because they're a team that we don't know where they're going to finish this year. It could be very high, and they could completely underachieve. There's going to be a lot to watch with Philadelphia. I completely agree with your pick.
Okay. On that note, that is it for the NBA for today. If you want to hear more Raptors predictions, we released a special podcast Tuesday night at 8 o'clock. So go check that out on our YouTube channel, or on this channel. So moving away from NBA, we are now moving on to hockey as we preview the World Juniors. What country do you think will be the biggest threat to Canada?
It feels like the U.S. It feels like the U.S. have been gaining on Canada more and more over the last, I'd say, 10 years. It feels like they're always close. Over the last 5 years, the teams that kind of are upsetting Canada are teams like Russia or Finland or Sweden, some of those European powerhouses. And the U.S. have been consistently in the finals and just not really breaking through. They broke through one year. I think, was it 2-3 years ago the U.S. won?
Yeah.
But they haven't had sustained success that they've been aiming for within the World Junior. So there's a lot of question marks around their ability to kind of close the deal out in this tournament. But I do think they have the roster to do it this year. I think, especially with the NHL season not starting, we've seen throughout all the teams they've had a little bit of a boost. We've seen Canada; they have Kirby Dach from the Chicago Blackhawks, a player that would usually be on the Blackhawks, but with the NHL season being delayed this year, he has the luxury of being in the World Juniors, as do a lot of these players that are on hockey teams already, or NHL teams already. So I do think it's the U.S. I think Russia and Sweden are just missing a little something, and I don't think Finland's roster is as strong as it has been previous years, in years that they have won the tournament. So I would have to say the U.S. are the biggest threat to Canada, and I do think they are a threat to Canada. I don't think Canada is a lock whatsoever this year.
I'd say for me, the biggest threat would be Sweden, actually. I just think that, and I actually don't really know the names that well. Even though I watch World Juniors, I don't follow the players that heavily. But from what I've seen from them, they have great goaltending, solid defense, and then they have quite a few weapons or few forwards that could really be very lethal towards Canada. And Sweden, they've always been consistent threat. They've always been consistent talks of being able to contend for the title, for the gold. But they haven't won since back in 2012, I believe. So I think the time is coming for Sweden to kind of get back there, because a team like Sweden, a country like Sweden that's so deeply rooted in hockey, I think it's been too long since they won, and I just don't see this streak lasting too much longer, because they are a good team. They are a country that really establishes the players well, that builds a good foundation for the players that eventually go into the NHL. So I could see them finally kind of breaking that streak and getting back to winning gold.
Yeah, Sweden are always a team that are in the semi. It always feels like they're in the semifinals. I don't remember a time where they've been knocked out in the kind of first round of elimination games. They're usually in the finals and somehow find a way to lose. But I think the promise is there for Sweden. I think they are my third team simply because of the talent. Their first line, they have two wingers, Alexander Holtz and Lucas Raymond, who have shown great chemistry throughout the preseason games, or throughout whatever you want to call, the warm-up games to the tournament. I just want to pull up the groups here, because there's always one team that has three good teams and one team with two, and that always makes the round robins, whatever group you're in, it makes the round robin really interesting. If you are in the harder group, it usually benefits you to be in the harder group, because even if you finish third, the second team usually isn't that much better than you. So I'm just trying to find the World Junior group here. If you have anything to add within the scope of the tournament.
No, like you said, also I do see U.S. as a very big threat to Canada, and like always, I'll always put Russia there. Russia's always like they're always gonna be contending because just the way they play hockey there, it's like
A lot of pride with Russia. Russia, you can never question their heart. Russia always plays with a ton of heart. I'm just
And in our sports with a ton of
groups.
drugs, but that's besides the point.
I don't know if they're all juiced. I'm sure a few of them are, but it's, yeah, I didn't want to say it. I didn't want to be the one that said it, so I'm glad you did. So Canada is in arguably the easier of the two groups. Their main competition is Finland, but it goes weaker as the other three teams are Switzerland, Slovakia, and Germany. The expectation is they will finish one, and they have to in order to get the fourth seed from Group B, which consists of Russia, Sweden, the United States, Czech Republic, and Austria. You obviously don't want to play the US, Sweden, or Russia in the quarterfinals. You would preferably want will likely be the Czech Republic because Austria isn't very good. And Canada's odds against the Czech Republic would be much higher against those three teams. You don't want to fall into that trap game in the quarterfinals because there's always one of them because we know the five teams that are contending are Canada, Finland, Russia, Sweden, and the US. Those are always the top five. So you never want to finish second in that group because then you risk facing Sweden or Russia or the US. So if you're Canada, you have to finish one in the group. If they were in the harder group like they are, every other year, then they may have that luxury of finishing two and still facing a weaker team at the 3 spot, but they can't get away with that this year. They have to show what they're made of early on. They have to get the win against Finland, and they have to play consistently the entire tournament because they, without a doubt, they have the easier group in the World Juniors.
Okay, so finally, we are moving on to a new segment where we will be answering 10 rapid-fire questions with 30 seconds for each of you to give your answer. So, without further ado, let's get started. 1 second. Which one of you is answering first?
Evan.
Okay,
Right.
Consistently. Perfect. Okay, so let's start. Who will win the World Juniors? Go.
It'd be wrong as a Canadian if I didn't say Canada. Do I think they have the talent to? Yes. I think they have great offense. They have great defense. And I think they have the pieces in place to win. The expectation is to win the tournament if you are Canada. So that's the standard we have to put them at. And anything short of winning this tournament would be a disappointment. We see it every year with this team. If they don't win, everyone loses their mind if you're Canada and we start abusing the players on Twitter. Let's just see how they play this year. Let's hope for a good tournament.
Troy.
And let's see if they win.
Yeah, I was about to say anyways, it's going to be Canada because it's just simply history shows that you just don't bet against Canada World Juniors. They have the history of always winning, and I don't see anything about a team that should make us think otherwise. Not that there's anything against these other teams that are playing well, but there's just so much going for Canada, and then the system they have to develop young players in the sport of hockey to really just win again this year.
Who is the most exciting prospect? Evan, go.
Despite him being on the Montreal Canadiens, I have to say Cole Caulfield on the U.S. In the last tournament he had expectations, but he played in the bottom 6 line. Didn't produce the points he wanted to. I think this is an opportunity for him to show what he's about, and it's an opportunity for the Montreal Canadiens to see what they have in one of their top prospects. Big expectations for Cole Caulfield this tournament.
Okay, Troy.
I'm going with Bowen Byram for the defenseman of the Carr Avalanche, who is also the defenseman for Team Canada because he's a young defenseman. He got picked 4th overall. I think he should have gone 3rd overall over Kirby Dach personally. And I'm excited to see what he can do because, again, he's a young defenseman. Defensemen take long to develop. But if he can prove what he can do in Team Canada, I'm excited to see what he can do for the Avalanche. And he's also a defenseman who can score quite a bit as well, so I'm excited to see that.
Okay, MVP, Rodgers or Mahomes?
It's crazy, but I have to say Aaron Rodgers. I think there's so much talent in Kansas City, and they have Andy Reid, which elevates Patrick Mahomes. It's like a duo. It's a match made in heaven. I think we've almost disrespected Aaron Rodgers the last few years because of Green Bay's disappointment. But I think a lot of that comes down to coaching and not enough talent on that team. I think the way Aaron Rodgers has composed himself and the way he's played all year and the chemistry he has with Devontae Adams without Aaron Rodgers, Green Bay is nowhere near as good as they are.
I was going to say Rodgers, but for the sake of a disagreement, I'll say Mahomes because it's not a far off thing to say Mahomes this year because simply that Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league right now. Rodgers is doing a lot for Green Bay, and no disrespect to Rodgers in any way or shape or form, but the Chiefs are what they are because of Patrick Mahomes. Andy Reid is providing him with the system that allows him to thrive, allows him to be the best quarterback. But the simple fact is that Andy Reid does have the greatest quarterback to use for his system.
Okay, Wentz or Hurts?
I just think Wentz is done. I don't know what his future lies in the NFL, but I don't know anyone's going to take him. His contract sucks. He looks like a shadow of his former self. He's always had expectations, and he's always kind of fell short. But early on, the Eagles played, at least at a competitive rate where we maybe thought he would be the future. But at this point, Carson Wentz just looks finished. And whether Jalen Hurts can continue this over the next few years, we'll see. But right now, going into this offseason, it has to be Jalen Hurts. Carson Wentz is finished on the Philadelphia Eagles.
Going against what I said earlier, I'm not going to be bar disagreeing with this one. I'm going Jalen Hurts because Wentz isn't that quarterback anymore.
Okay. Thoughts on Juju's dancing?
Ridiculous. Now they lost 3 games in a row. He looks like an absolute clown. Teams are now taking offense to it. You saw what the Bills were like, screw this guy. I don't know why he's dancing on our logo. They actually took personal offense to it. I don't know what he's doing. After they lost 2 in a row, he should have just stopped, but he wants to be who he is. That's fine. Let Juju dance all the way to a first-round playoff exit.
Yeah, and we saw him fumble the ball. I'm glad that happened, and I think when he got tackled, I think he should have just stayed on the field like forever. So.
Okay.
He should have danced he should have rolled around the logo and maybe done another TikTok dance after the fumble. Just it's clown behavior. Let's be honest. From Juju Smith-Schuster.
Next, so what are the Steelers hoping for in the AFC North now?
They should be hoping to still in the division. Cleveland's right on their heels. They basically allowed Cleveland back into the playoff hunt. I'm pretty sure Pittsburgh does play Cleveland within the next 2 weeks. It's a big test for them. They haven't looked good over the last 3 weeks. Looked horrible against the Bills. In the first half, Big Ben looked like he was injured or something. And against Washington, I think that was a game where people started to realize this team isn't as good as we originally thought.
Yeah, the Steelers are the most, like I said before, the Steelers are the most overrated team to go for undefeated for most of the season, and they're kind of showing that now. They lost to the Bengals, who really is not a team.
Bengals suck. The Bengals suck.
They don't have Joe Burrow, and they still lost that team. And the number one defense, come on, you can't stop Joe Burrow's backup quarterback. Are you kidding me?
I think it's a confidence thing. I think the confidence is shot out of that team.
Yeah, and I'm excited because I hate the Steelers and I want them to see them crumble, and now I'm getting what I want. So.
Time's up. Will Trevor Lawrence be a Jet?
I don't know. The Jaguars have to win one of the next 2 games. I don't think the Jets will win another game. I think it was a one-off, but they haven't looked bad the last 2 weeks. They almost beat the Raiders, despite Greg Williams blitzing from the 50-yard line on the final play of the game. Trevor Lawrence could be a very special player. We don't know until we actually see it, but he has all the mechanics to be that number 1 guy. And the Jets may have missed out on a future guy. Classic Jets.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be Jets. I think it's going to be Jaguars because their hope lies on the fact that the Jaguars will be a successful team, and you can't bet on the Jaguars being successful. So I honestly don't think he'll make it to the Jets.
Anything can happen in the NFL. One of those teams may get 1 win out of the next 2 games. We've seen crazier things, so we really have to see if it's really up to the Jaguars to see if they get a win out of the next 2 matches.
Okay. Thoughts on Kevin Green?
It's sad. His impact on the Steelers. I know we both hate the Steelers, but it's what an absolute animal on the defensive side of the floor. Such an impactful part of the steel current. It's a tough loss. You never want to see anyone die, especially with his kind of stature in the league. So, RIP to him, friends and family. I hope for the city of Pittsburgh that they mourn the loss of Kevin Green because he was a terrific all-around player for that team, and he really brought life to that city in a time where they really needed it.
Yeah, it was very sad news.
22 seconds.
Yeah, it was very sad news to hear, and I, even as a Ravens fan, when I heard about the news, I was very sad about the loss because I know about the impact he had for the Steelers, the impact he had for the game, because he was such a great player when he was there, and he's gone too soon. Simple as that. And I would get like you said, RP to his family, to his friends, and into him and like into the state of Pittsburgh.
Okay. New England eliminated from the playoffs for the first time since 2008. How quickly can they be back?
I think it'll take a while because Buffalo is a young team with a young star QB, and Sean McDermott, I think, is a great coach, and I think Buffalo kind of has I think Buffalo just has a hold on that division for the next few years. I think New England's roster needs definitely retooling. And I think if they can retool that, and as long as Bill Belichick stays, they're never out of it. But they definitely need a new QB, and they do need pieces on that defense to recover. And they definitely need some more talent on the offensive side of the ball.
Time.
I say honestly, they just need like a year or two because Belichick is just that good, both as a coach and as GM. I just think like even if they don't get the division, because Buffalo is a team that's going to be successful for quite a while in the future. I still think since there's 3 wildcard spots now, they have a chance to make it back. Belichick isn't going to stay out for long. Like, I wouldn't ever bet against Belichick. Even this year, like even with Cam Newton starting quarterback, I never bet against Belichick, even when the Patriots were at their worst.
Okay. Last question. Notre Dame or Texas A&M, who deserved the 4th spot?
I mean, I think a lot of people are overblowing the situation. I think both teams are going to get killed by Alabama. Notre Dame didn't look good against Clemson, but we all figured that they did beat Clemson early on in the year. You could blame injuries or whatnot, but they're not a bad team, Notre Dame. Whether you gave it to them or Texas A&M, they're both getting killed by Alabama anyways. So we'll see Alabama in the finals. It just comes down to the 2-3 game.
Yeah, I'll just say just give it to Notre Dame because like they've played well most season. I get that the final impression matters, but like they were 10 games in a row. They've proven that they deserve to be there. Do I think they're going to win? No, but they deserve some 4th spot in my opinion.
Okay. And that's it for Rapid Fire, and I think that's about it for today. So thank you for listening to 5-5 Sports, and if you like what you are listening to, feel free to subscribe and join us next week. Thanks for listening.
See you.